What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We're going to project what the ACC standings will look like for the upcoming 2021 college football season in this video. If you missed our other projections, we've already done the SEC, we've done the Big 10, we will do the Big 12 tomorrow, and plan to do the Pac-12 on Sunday. And this is all based off of the projected records that we did a couple of months ago. So keep in mind, this is not a prediction. This is simply a projection based off of how good the general consensus is and how good everyone thinks that these teams are going to be this year. Not necessarily just me, but just the overall national narrative on these teams. Putting that up against their schedule and how tough their schedule is, then we give you a projection. And it's a very conservative projection. A team may be favored in every single game that they play, but because the odds would catch up to you that you're going to lose a game or two, you might have a couple of losses in there. So keep all that in mind as we go through and do this projection. My predictions will start the day after Memorial Day. So that's when you're going to find out my official predictions for the upcoming season. In the ACC, we start in the Atlantic. Syracuse at the bottom, 2-6 in the conference, 5-7 overall, not making it to a bowl game. Just not a lot to get excited about if you're a Syracuse fan. Had a rough couple of years, the last couple of seasons. Tommy DeVito, he will be back. Can he kind of take that next step? We just haven't really seen it from him. Since they lost Eric Dungy, the quarterback position just hasn't been great for Syracuse. Culpepper came in there last year and did okay, but it's just a team that I think is probably pretty clearly going to finish at the bottom of this division. There could be another team that might wind up there, but I think they're in let's say the bottom two. And then we got a big tie. I mean, it's a 5-way tie in the Atlantic Division based off of our projections with NC State, Boston College, Wake Forest, Florida State, and Louisville. And these are in no particular order, except I did put the 7-5 teams ahead of the 6-6 teams. But yeah, NC State, Boston College, Wake Forest, Florida State, Louisville. I don't think this is not how I'm going to predict it. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a spoiler. Boston College is going to do better than 4-4 in the conference. I really feel like they will. NC State's probably going to do better than that. Wake Forest, Florida State, they might be on that line around 4-4. I think Florida State has potential to do a lot better than that as well. Louisville's a team that when I did my early projections, I felt a little bit better about them. But as I really dig into this roster for Louisville, I think they might have another pretty rough year. So 4-4 might be a little bit generous with them, finishing 6-6 overall. But yeah, all 5 of these teams, according to the projection, would make it to a bowl game. I don't think that's going to happen. I think at least one of them will not make it to a bowl game. Which team will that be? Who knows? But again, these are very conservative projections. It's going to be pulling these records towards the average, towards the 4-4, and you see that here. But that's kind of where you can kind of put the mark for the season. And I said this in the other videos. If you do better than this, you have a pretty good year. If you do worse than this, it's a bad year. NC State, Boston College. If they go 8-4, they've had a pretty good year. I mean, that's pretty good. If Boston College or NC State goes 6-6, that's a bad year. I mean, it really is. Wake Forest 7-5. They have a pretty easy non-conference schedule. Florida State is in there. I think Wake Forest has the deal with North Carolina this year where they play a non-conference game, even though they're in the same conference, which is just weird. Florida State, if they can do better than 6-6 with their schedule, I think it's a pretty good year. Louisville, I would say if Louisville can get to 6-6, that's actually a good season. Like I said, I feel a little bit different about this team than I did when I did their projection, which was at least a month ago. As I do more research on these teams, my thoughts change on these teams. And that, again, is a team that I just don't feel quite as good about. Florida State's a team that I feel pretty good about. I think they're going to be better this year, but their schedule is just brutal. I mean, they play North Carolina and Miami out of the Coastal Division. We did our top 10 schedule rankings. If you missed that video, go back and check it out. 10 toughest schedules, also the 10 easiest schedule. I believe Florida State was number 2 on the toughest schedules, behind only Georgia Tech. So again, their schedule and that's a big part of this projection, not just how good are these teams going to be, but how good are they going to be and how hard is their schedule. That's how you get these projected records. But number 1 is obvious. It's Clemson, 12-0. They actually, if you go through and do the projection, they were like 11.5 and 0.5. So we had to kind of make a pick on Clemson and Georgia on who was going to win that game here for the projection. Not necessarily who I'm going to pick when I do my predictions, But because Clemson was favored in more games than Georgia, by more than Georgia, because they have an easier schedule, Clemson's the team that ultimately got the win in that projection. So Clemson's the team that is 12-0, but that could easily be 11-1 if they lose to Georgia, and I just don't see them losing in the conference. I'll go ahead and tell you right now. My prediction for Clemson will be 11-1 or 12-0, and it will be 8-0 in the conference. I am not going to pick Clemson to lose a conference game, at least in the regular season. So there is another spoiler for you right there. But this is how the Atlantic Division shakes out. I think, I agree with this as far as my predictions. I really think that Clemson is easily the top team. Syracuse is probably at the bottom. There might be some separation, though, for me with NC State and Boston College. I think those two teams might be a little bit better than Wake Forest and Florida State. And again, Louisville might be a little bit overrated here. But that's what the Atlantic Division looks like. Let's go to the Coastal Division. We start at the bottom. Duke and Georgia Tech both going 2-6. Now, it's going to be hard for Duke to win a conference game. When I look at their roster, this is not going to be a good team. But again, conservative approach here with these projections. Duke might have they're going to be big underdogs in every game that they play in the ACC, let's say. But the odds would say that they're going to find a way to win one or two of those games. So 1 or 2 wins is possible for Duke, but I really don't think this team is going to be very good this year. 5-7, the overall projection. Georgia Tech, I think, could do better than 2-6 in the conference. It's a team that is not going to be great this year, but I could see them sneaking out maybe 3 conference wins. Getting to a bowl game, though, is going to be tough just because of their non-conference schedule. I mean, it's brutal. And like I said, Georgia Tech has the toughest schedule in college football, according to our top 10 toughest schedules. They play UCF. They play Georgia. I think they've maybe even played Notre Dame. It is a brutal schedule for Georgia Tech. Also, they're going to play Clemson out of the Atlantic Division. So those two teams at the bottom, I think that's pretty clear. And then you've got some teams clustered in the middle. That is Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, and Virginia. We've got all of these teams going 4-4. Also, keep in mind, and I mentioned this in the other videos, our projections are only based off of the overall record. So I'm having to kind of make up the conference records to match the overall projection, and also to get the wins and losses to come out even in the conference. So you could maybe change some of this around. Virginia Tech could go 5-3, or let's say they're 7-5, so they could lose 5 conference games. They could be 3-5. Virginia could maybe go 5-7. They're not 5-7. Excuse me. They could go 5-3. So there are a lot of different ways to maybe get to these records, these overall records, but these seem to be the most likely records, conference records, to go along with those overall records. Hopefully that makes sense for all of you. But Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, and Virginia right there in the middle. Pitt has a pretty easy non-conference schedule, so they have a better overall record here at 8-4. Virginia plays a couple of tough non-conference games. They're only 6-6 here in the projection. And Pittsburgh's an interesting team. Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech, I think, have a bigger upside than Virginia, but Virginia is a team that I think is going to be solid, so I can kind of get on board with this. I think these 3 teams could all finish right there around 4-4. But watch out for Pitt. I'm telling you, Pitt could be a sneaky good team in this division. Virginia Tech could be as well. They've been really inconsistent, though, over the last few years. And then at the top, we've got North Carolina and Miami. Both teams finishing 5-3 in the conference. North Carolina 9-3 overall. Miami 8-4 overall. And that seems like a pretty low number, but keep in mind, especially with North Carolina, they lost a couple of games that they should not have lost last year. So it can happen again, and the projection is going to go with a more conservative approach, and that would put North Carolina there at 5-3 in the conference. Really 9-3 overall. So if you count Notre Dame as a loss, you could change North Carolina's record to 6-2 in the conference. So 6-2, 5-3, somewhere in there. Miami, I think, is pretty clearly going to lose to Alabama. I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler on that pick. So that's going to put them at 8-4 overall, but 5-3 in the conference. I put North Carolina ahead of Miami because they played them at home, and that's how I did the tiebreakers. If there were 2 teams tied, Duke gets Georgia Tech at home. That's why I put Duke ahead of Georgia Tech. But again, those games are expected. Those teams are expected to be tied with these projections. So that's the ACC. No real surprises here when you look at the projections based off of the schedules and everything. It's clearly Clemson in the Atlantic. It's North Carolina or Miami in the Coastal Division. But what's interesting is how close this race is. Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, and Virginia all just 1 game behind Miami and North Carolina. So could we maybe see something a little bit different? Everyone's thinking it's North Carolina or maybe Miami could Pitt, Virginia Tech possibly challenge in this division? I'm going to go ahead and say right now, I think one of those teams will be up there to at least challenge them. Will they win this division? Maybe not, but I think they'll at least challenge and be in that race in November. But North Carolina and Miami do seem to be the two teams that are clearly favored in this division. What do you guys think about these projections? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.